Um, Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you. So we will start our free lecture for the day. And ang subject naman natin for this free lecture is agricultural economics and marketing. So this is shorter, I suppose, than what we did sa animal science. Because sa animal science, we did 50. Pero I just want to chop it up, yung mga questions natin, and just show around 20 questions and explain the concepts for each questions right after answering it. Okay? So simulan natin sa unang tanong on agricultural economics and marketing. By the way, ang agricultural economics and marketing, it was ranked as the second most difficult subject daw sa licensure exam for agriculturists. Pero ako'y naniniwala na hindi naman siya ganun kahirap. In fact, kapag nasundan natin yung mga concepts and theories within the lecture itself, mas madali nating masasagot yung mga tanong kahit pa mabali-baliktad siya. Ang kagandahan sa agricultural economics and marketing, hindi ganun ka-intensive ang memorization, but it is more of understanding the concepts behind each questions. Okay? So it's more of pag-intindi, pag-analyze ng mga concepts and topics that we have. Okay, so first question. Sabi dito, a statement says that government should set a high floor price for palay because it is fair to farmers. So this is best classified as what? So there is a statement, ang sabi doon sa statement, government should set, so dapat daw mag-set sila ng mataas na floor price for palay kasi yun daw yung nararapat or yun ang fair sa mga farmers. Now, pagdating sa analysis ng different economic problems or approach to economic problems, meron po tayong dalawang approaches. Okay? So ano po itong dalawang approaches na to? Yung dalawang approaches na yan is what we call as positive. Okay? So meron tayong positive economics and we have what we call as normative economics. So dito sa question na to, yun po yung tinatanong. Okay? Base dun sa statement, sorry, by analyzing the statement, government should set a high floor price for palay because it is fair to farmers. We're actually looking at the two approaches on handling economic problems. So, anong pinagkaiba ng positive economics at saka normative economics? Simple lang yan. When we say we are approaching the problem positively or positive economics, we're only looking at facts. Okay? Tinitignan lang natin objectively kung ano yung problema. We are only describing the problem. Sometimes we are also predicting what could happen. Okay? Pero wala siyang subjective bias. Walang any morality involved. Okay? Basically, we're just stating the facts. Pag normative naman, dyan na yung meron ng moral subjectivity. Meron ng bias, let's say. Meron ng opinion. Meron ng value judgment. And ano yung isang palatandaan ng statement or ang isang problem is a normative statement? Kapag gumagamit sila ng mga words na should, must, dapat lang, yan. So normative po yung mga yan. So dito, sa ating problem, a government should set a high floor price for palay. So merong value judgment based off on that. This statement now becomes what we call as normative. Okay? Normative economics na po yan. Okay? So it is creating a value judgment, may should and fair. So normative economics yan. Hindi po yan positive economics kasi kapag positive yan or descriptive, halos parehas lang yung dalawang yan. We're only looking at the problem objectively. Okay? Hindi rin yan experimental because experimental is not a method. This is a method, okay? It is not a statement type. Okay? So, letter A, ang tamang sagot dyan, normative economics. Next question. In agricultural economics, wage pairing correctly matches a major field of study with its central question. Okay? Now, isa sa mga nakalagay na topics sa table of specifications natin is to know or to determine yung mga different fields of agricultural economics. So basically, ang sinasabi dito sa tanong is, imamatch lang natin ano ba yung tamang field doon sa tamang function or tamang areas na pinag-aaralan niya. Okay? So we have letter A, marketing economics, how to choose least cost channels to move products. Letter B, production economics, how to distribute national income. Letter C, macroeconomics, how a single firm sets output. Or letter D, resource economics, how to compute GDP by expenditure. So, unahin muna natin si letter D. Kapag po sinabi nating resource economics, we're actually not looking at the GDP. Hindi po GDP ang tinitingnan natin yan, but rather, it is more on the sustainable use of resources. Okay? So, yan ang tinitingnan natin sa resource economics. With the word resource, ang unang papasok dapat sa isip nyo, sustainable use of resources. Okay? Ano naman po ang macroeconomics? Now, macroeconomics is another field of economics, okay, which studies the economics or the which approaches, okay, the study of economics by looking at the performance of the entire country. So, tinitignan dyan yung buong bansa. Not a single firm, so hindi po single firm, but rather the whole country. So, papasok na yung mga topic dyan na unemployment, gross domestic product, national income, yun po ang macroeconomics. Letter B naman, production economics, ang pinag-uusapan dyan. Kapag narinig nyo yung word na production, dapat automatic na papasok sa isip nyo ay output-input. Okay? Yun lang po ang production. Ano ang relationship ng input sa output? Ano yung input? Yan yung mga raw materials sa isang negosyo, let's say. Ano yung output? Yan yung mga goods and services. So yung pag-aaral ng input and output, production economics po yan. Next, we have marketing economics. So ano naman po ang marketing economics? Yan na ngayon yung pag-aaral ng mga different marketing channels. Okay? Kung saan itatransport yung mga produkto ni farmers, sabihin na natin. Okay? So yun po ang marketing economics naman. So based on these options, yung may pinakatamang pairing is it's letter A, marketing economics and how to choose a least cost channels to move products. Okay? Sunod na question. Okay? A farmer adds more labor to a fixed 1 hectare plot. Now, output still rises kasi nga dumami yung nagtatrabaho, but each additional worker adds less extra output than the previous one. This illustrates what concept? Yan ba yung concept of law of increasing opportunity cost, law of diminishing marginal utility, law of supply, or law of diminishing returns? Okay? Ano kayang concept yan? Okay? Now, isa-isahin natin yung mga options. So, meron tayong ditong law of increasing opportunity cost. Now, ang law of increasing opportunity cost, this is more, makikita natin yan, yung increasing opportunity cost na yan, when we talk about the production possibilities frontier. Now, I don't want to dwell into that topic, no, kasi mahaba-habang topic yun. But basically, ang sinasabi sa production possibilities frontier, kapag ang dalawang bansa daw ay may kakayahan lang na mag-produce ng dalawang produkto. Let's say ang product na kaya nilang i-produce ay A, at saka B product lang. Yan lang yung ipoproduce nila. Apple at saka banana lang yung kaya nilang i-produce. Habang tumataas daw yung production ng Apple, okay, pataas naman daw ng pataas yung opportunity cost, okay, or nag-i-increase yung opportunity cost sa pag-produce ng Apple. Okay? Mali yung statement ko. Ulitin natin. Ulitin natin. Balik tayo. Okay. So habang pataas ang pataas yung production ng Apple, pataas din daw ng pataas yung opportunity cost ng Apple. Bakit? Kasi palaki ng palaki yung nawawalang banana every time na tumataas yung production ng Apple. Yun yung sinasabi ng increasing opportunity cost. So if you have like, if you're going to produce, say, 2 products sa farm mo, say patatas at saka cabbage, kapag dumadami yung pinoproduce mong cabbage, mas maraming nawawalang patatas, yung kawalan ng patatas na yun yung pagtaas ng opportunity cost doon sa kabilang produkto. Kasi ano ba ang opportunity cost? Opportunity cost is the value of the foregone alternative. Ibig sabihin, every time na tayo ay namimili, meron po tayong value na isinasakripisyo. Okay? So for instance, kapag pinili mong, pag pinili mo ngayon sa akin na umattend ng class, ng free lecture ngayon, isinasacrifice mo yung ibang mga bagay. Like hindi ka pa siguro muna nag-mall, o hindi ka pa siguro muna nakipag-date, yun yung sacrifice mo. So ganun din sa economics, no? Every time na namimili tayo ng mga bagay-bagay, may opportunity cost na nasa-sacrifice. Yun yung opportunity cost na sinasabi dyan. And yung increasing opportunity cost is yung pagtaas ng value na yon. Okay? Ano naman yung letter B? Law of diminishing marginal utility. Ang diminishing marginal utility naman ay makikita natin yan sa konsepto ng consumption. Okay? Anong sinasabi sa consumption? Sabi sa consumption, sa theory of consumption, individual consumption to, darating daw yung time na pataas ng pataas yung karagdagang satisfaction na nakukuha natin sa pag-consume ng isang product. But then there comes a time kung saan siya ay magpa-plateau. Bakit nagpa-plateau? Bakit biglang nagpa-flatline? In fact, hindi lang flatline yung end stage. Darating yung time na bababa pa yung additional satisfaction na makukuha natin. Kasi, ang sinasabi sa law of diminishing marginal utility, ang tao kasi ay nagsasawa. So, meron tayong satiety. Okay? So, hindi po pwedeng unlimited na nagko-consume lang tayo ng produkto. Kasi darating yung time na mabubusog ka, di ka na makakakain, kaya bumababa yung utility na nakukuha mo doon. Now, when you say utility, another way to think about it is satisfaction. Ano? So, kumbaga, bumababa yung additional utility na nakukuha natin, bumababa yung additional utility or marginal utility na nakukuha natin every time na tayo nagko-consume ng produkto. Okay? Next, merong law of supply. Okay? Ano naman po ang law of supply? So kapag sinabi naman nating law of supply, this is simply the law which states na every time na tumataas ang price, so every time na tumataas ang price, tumataas din po ang supply or quantity supply to be specific. Okay? So every time na tumataas ang price, tumataas rin yung quantity supply. Yun yung law of supply. So bakit kaya nangyayari yun? Now, when we talk about supply, remember guys, we are talking about producers. Okay? Producers po, or yung mga businesses natin or yung mga farmers natin. And ano ang goal ng mga firms? Ano yung goal ng mga businesses? Ano yung goal ng mga stores and firms natin? Ang goal nila is kumita. Kaya naman, kapag habang tumataas ang presyo ng produkto, tumataas rin yung quantity na sinusupply nila. So, yun yung sinasabi ng law of supply. So, mapapansin natin yung first 3 concepts, wala siyang halos kinalaman dun sa question. Ano? Kasi ang tamang sagot dyan, guys, is letter D talaga. law of diminishing returns. Now, ano ba ang law of diminishing returns? Ang law of diminishing returns, makikita po natin yan sa production economics. Sabi ko sa inyo kanina, sa production economics, tinitignan natin yung relationship ng input at output. So ano po yung input? Yan yung raw materials ng negosyo. Ano yung output? Yan yung goods and services na pinuproduce ng business. So ibig sabihin, kapag tumataas yung raw materials, yung input natin, it just makes sense na tataas rin dapat yung kakayahan ng isang negosyo na mag-produce ng mas maraming output. Tama? Yes, tama, no? Kapag mas maraming raw materials, mas marami yung kayang maiproduce na goods and services. However, ang production kasi, meron tayo dyan, lalo na pagdating sa short run. Pero alisin na muna natin yung short run na yun. Pero pagdating sa resources kasi, or pagdating sa input, ang input, there are two types. Specifically in the short run. Meron tayong fixed input. Okay? Yan yung input na hindi nagbabago. And then meron tayong variable input. So ano ang example ng fixed input? Kapag sinabi natin fixed input, yan yung mga inputs na hindi mo basta-basta pwedeng baguhin in the short run. So na example ng fixed input, yan. Yung 1 hectare plot. So yung 1 hectare plot na yan, that is a fixed input. Okay? Hindi mo yan pwedeng baguhin. Fix yan in the short run. Ngayon, ano naman yung variable input? Yan yung mga inputs na pwede mong baguhin. So sa ating question, ang variable input po dyan ay si worker. Okay? Pwede mong baguhin, pwede kang magdagdag. In fact, nagdagdag nga siya dito. Now, ang tanong sa atin is, since ang pwede lang mabago is the variable input, ang ginawa lang niya ay nagdagdag lamang siya ng worker. Pwede ba siyang magdagdag ng unlimited worker para makakuha siya ng unlimited amount of output? Hindi, di ba? Bakit hindi? Kasi yung lupa niya ay fixed. Darating yung time, kung sabihin natin yung 1 hectare plot, kapag siya ay nag-hire ng 10,000 na worker dyan, abay hindi na magiging productive yung lupa na yan. In fact, puro gastos na lang nga ang makukuha mo doon. Yung mga tao doon, hindi na sila magtatrabaho kasi sila yung magsisiksikan doon sa 1 hectare land na yon. So yun yung sinasabi ng law of diminishing returns. Okay? Darating yung time na yes, nag-i-increase yung output mo every time na mag-i-increase ka ng input, pero dahil yung isang resource mo, yung isang input mo ay fixed, darating yung point kung saan habang nagdadagdag ka ng variable, yung karagdagang returns or karagdagang production bumababa up until it hits zero and up until bumaba even yung total production mo. Okay? So that is the law of diminishing returns. Next question. Which cost classification is most accurate for a farmer's own land use in production when no cash rent is paid? Okay? So we're now looking at the cost classification. So ano kayang type of cost daw? Yung cost ni farmer kapag ginamit niya yung sarili niyang lupa. So ano kayang type of cost yun? Unahin natin sa letter D. Sunk cost. Ano ba ang sunk cost? Kapag sinabi nating sunk cost, yan po ay mga unrecoverable past spending. Okay? So, yung sunk cost yan. Ibig sabihin, kapag nag-spend ka na dyan, hindi mo na po yan maibabalik. So, example, kunwari ikaw ay nagrenta ng isang boarding house or isang apartment. Ang nasa kontrata ng iyong renta ay 12 months to pay. Okay? 12 months dapat daw na magmananatili ka doon, 12 months kang magbabayad ng renta. 8 months pa lang, nakahanap ka na ng bagong tirahan or let's say, nanalo ka ng loto kaya nagpatayuan ng sarili mong bahay within 8 months. Babayaran mo pa rin yung buong 12 months na yon. Sunk cost na po yun. Okay? Kasi nga may kontrata ka na kailangan mong bayaran yun. So sa isang negosyo, ganun din. Madalas kapag nagre-renta tayo ng space for businesses, may kontrata yan. So, hindi ka basta-basta pwede na lang magsara or basta pwedeng umalis na lang. Okay? So, kunwari, ang kontrata ay 2 years, kailangan mo tapusin yung 2 years para hindi ka makakuha ng sunk cost. Okay? Kasi, basically, ang sinasabi ng sunk cost, gastos na yan. Wala ka nang magagawa. You cannot recover that. Okay? Ano naman ang explicit fixed cost? Now, with the word explicit, ang ibig lang sabihin ng explicit na cost is, yan yung mga cost kung saan ikaw ay naglabas ng pera. Okay? So, nagbayad ka talaga ng cash. Yan. Explicit yan. There is an actual payment that was made. Now, i-combine natin yung term, explicit fixed cost. So, ano ulit ang fixed cost? Yan yung cost na hindi nagbabago. So, kapag binayaran mo ang isang resources na hindi nagbabago, isang fixed resources, katulad ng lupa, we now call that as explicit fixed cost. So, ano naman ang direct variable cost? So, ang direct variable cost, actually, yung variable cost lang importante dyan, yan yung cost ng mga resources na nagbabago. Variable cost. So, with that said, B, C, at saka D, medyo malayo siya dun sa tinatanong dun sa question. Kaya ang tamang sagot po dyan ay implicit cost. So, ano naman po ba ang implicit cost? Remember, kahit si farmer ay hindi naglabas ng pera dahil nga ginamit niya yung sarili niyang lupa. So kahit na hindi siya naglabas ng pera, dahil ginamit niya yung sarili niyang lupa, okay, may cost pa rin po yun. Okay? Ang tawag doon sa cost na yun, implicit cost. Or sometimes they also call this as your opportunity cost. May gastos pa rin yun, economically speaking. Bakit may gastos? Kasi basically, yung lupa na yon could have been set aside for other business ventures. Pwede naman yung parentahan, for example. Okay? Pwede naman yung ibenta. So may cost yun. So dahil ginamit niya for his own business, na i-forgo na ngayon yung opportunity of pagpaparenta ng lupa or pagbenta ng lupa. So yun yung implicit cost na sinasabi dyan. Okay? So yan yung opportunity cost. Okay? So I hope that is clear distinction. So actually, ang opposite na type of cost dyan is implicit at saka explicit cost. So simple lang intindihin ha. Kapag implicit cost, walang nilabas na pera pero may opportunity cost na involved. Walang nilabas na pera pero may opportunity cost na involved. Kapag explicit cost naman, mayroong nilabas na pera. So ano pa example ng implicit cost? Kunwari, family labor. Inutusan ka ng tatay mo na pumunta sa farm at tulungan siya doon, pero hindi kanya sinelduhan, implicit cost yan. Okay? Meron pa rin yung cost economically speaking. Next question. If the price of fertilizer rises and farmers supply less corn as a result, this is best described as, okay, so pupunta na tayo sa supply, ano? So ano nangyari dun sa situation natin? The price of fertilizer rises. So, tumaas ang production cost ni farmer kasi nagmahal ang fertilizer. Now, nung nagmahal ang fertilizer, anong ginawa ni farmer? Anong adjustment yung ginawa niya? Ibinaba daw niya yung supply ng kanyang tinatanim na mais. That's the situation. What is the problem? This is best described as what? So ano kayang tawag dito? Or how do you describe this situation? Or what is the theory behind this specific situation? So pupunta ka sa letter A, sabi niya dyan, a shift of the demand curve. Now, you have to ask yourself, demand ba yung pinag-uusapan dyan? Or supply? In fact, ang pinag-uusapan dyan, supply, ano? Kasi ang demand, you are looking at the buyers. Kapag supply naman, you are looking at the farmers. So letter A statement, a shift of the demand curve is already wrong. Kasi what we are talking here is not about the buyer, but rather it is about the farmer. So if letter A is wrong, letter B is already wrong as well kasi demand na naman yung pinag-uusapan. Okay? So we are now left with C or D. Okay? Kasi si C at saka D, sila lang yung nagbanggit dyan ng supply. Okay? Now, what is the correct answer between C and D. Is it letter C, a shift of the supply curve, change in supply, or a movement along the supply curve, change in quantity supply? So ang tamang sagot po dyan ay letter C. Okay? A shift of the supply curve, or we also call that vis-a-vis change in supply. So sa supply and even naman sa demand, meron tayong tinatawag na change in quantity supply. So kapag nakita niyo yung triangle na yan, change in quantity supply ang tawag dyan. At change in supply. Okay? So anong pinagkaiba ng change in quantity supply at change in supply? Simple lang. Kapag sinabi natin change in quantity supply, there is only a movement along the supply curve. So gumagalaw lang po yung supply points doon sa isang supply curve. Okay? Movement lang siya along the supply curve. And ang reason kung bakit tayo nagkakaroon ng change in quantity supply is only because of the price. Okay? Presyo lang po ang nagko-cause ng change in quantity supply. Whereas, ang change in supply naman, yung mismong supply curve natin gumagalaw. So the supply curve shifts entirely. And ano yung reason ng paggalaw ng ating supply curve? Ang reason ay maraming factors. Okay? So isang factor dyan is yung production cost natin. Ayun nakalagay dyan, yung fertilizer prices, isang reason yan. Another one would be the price of other goods, katulad ng substitute and complementary goods. Another one would be taxes ng government na pinapataw sa mga negosyo. Okay? So anything na hindi related sa price, anything na change na hindi related sa price will now cause a change in the supply. Okay? So yun yung difference yan. So dito, since ang pinag-uusapan dyan is production cost, the price of fertilizer, and then bumaba daw yung supply ni farmer, that is now a shift of the entire supply curve, yan po ay change in supply. Okay? So letter C yung tamang sagot doon. Next, the price elasticity of demand for a stable staple product katulad ng rice is often relatively low. So if the demand is inelastic, a price increase will typically cause total revenue, which is price times Q, to what will happen. Okay? So, isa-isayin natin yung statement. Ang sabi dyan, ang mga staple products daw, katulad ng rice, mababa yung kanilang price elasticity. So ano yung ibig sabihin na mababa ang price elasticity ng rice? It means, kahit na magbago yung presyo ng rice, hindi pa rin basta-basta nagbabago yung demand po ng rice. So it doesn't matter whether tumaas ang price ng rice, meron at meron pa rin bibili dyan. So hindi ganun ka-sensitive yung mga buyers or hindi ganun ka-sensitive yung demand. Okay? Yun yung sinasabi dyan. Now, kapag hindi ganun ka-sensitive ang mga buyers ng rice, ano ang mangyayari sa revenue? Now, kapag sinabi nating revenue, we are now talking here about the sales. Sales ni farmer. Okay? So kapag tumaas ang presyo ng rice, which is inelastic, which is may bibili pa rin, ano mangyayari dun sa kita or dun sa benta ni farmer? Hindi kita kasi ang kita ay profit. So, anong mangyayari? Tumaas ang presyo ng rice, pero marami pa rin ang bibili ng rice dahil nga inelastic ang demand ng rice. What will happen to the total revenue of the farmer? It will increase, decrease, or stay constant. It will increase. Okay? So, alisin na natin yung mga walang increase dyan. Sabi dyan, stay constant, mali na yan. Decrease, mali na yan. Kasi ang hinahanap natin is increase. Tataas po ang revenue ni farmer. Now, is it letter B, increase because quantity falls proportionally less? Or letter C, increase because quantity falls proportionally more. Okay? Ano kayang mas tamang sagot dyan? In the total revenue will increase because quantity falls proportionally less, or it will increase because quantity falls proportionally more. So remember kapag sinabi natin na inelastic ang demand, it means hindi basta-basta gumagalaw yung demand. So kahit na tumaas yung presyo, say, sa law of demand, kapag tumaas ang presyo, bababa ang demand. Pero kapag inelastic ang demand, kahit na tumaas ang presyo, yung demand mo, bababa pero sobrang kaunti lang yung pagbaba niya kasi may bibili at bibili pa rin. So with that statement, the revenue, the sales will increase. Why? Because quantity falls proportionally less. Hindi more, but rather less. Bababa siya pero sobrang kaunti lang. Kaya tataas pa rin yung kita ni farmer. Yun yung sinasabi dyan. So letter B ang tamang sagot dyan. Okay? Next. In a monopoly market, price and output are primarily determined by, so in a monopoly market, paano daw dinidetermine ng isang negosyo yung presyo ng kanyang bilihin at kung gaano karami yung kanyang ipoproduce. Okay? So ano ba kasi ang monopoly na market? So when we say the market is undergoing, or the firm is under a monopolistic market, it means there is only one seller. Tapos napakadaming buyers. Okay? So many buyers, one seller. Yan ang monopoly market. Okay? Now, ang question sa atin is, kapag ikaw ay isang negosyo na ikaw lang yung nagpo-produce kasi ikaw lang yung seller, tsaka marami kang buyer, meron ka na bang kakayahan na i-increase yung price ng yung produkto infinitely? Ibig sabihin, walang katapusan, itataas mo na lang yan? Hindi, di ba? Okay? Kasi kahit na ikaw ay isang monopoly market, kailangan mo pa rin kontrolin yung presyo mo base sa supply and demand. And paano mo makokontrol yung presyo mo? And then yung output na ipoproduce mo? Well, ang general rule dyan is you will you will produce at the price and at the output level where MR, or marginal revenue, is equal to marginal cost. Okay? So yun lamang po, ano? You will only produce at the level where MR is equal to MC. So in a monopoly market, lagi niyong tandaan ito. Ang price and output determination in a monopoly market is where MR is equal to MC, or it is where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Okay? So, yan yung general rule, yan yung golden rule. Now, I would explain MR equals to MC rule siguro sa mga susunod na kabanata ng lectures natin, ano? Kasi masyado ng tight. Masyado tayong maraming concept na kailangan buklatin kapag inopen ko kung anong ibig sabihin ng MR is equal to MC. Pero sa ngayon, I think this will do. In order to determine the price and output, it is the point where marginal revenue is equal to marginal cost. Hindi lang po yan sa isang monopoly market. Sa lahat ng market actually, MR is equal to MC lagi yung rule. Okay? Next. Place utility in agricultural marketing is created primarily by which function? So, ano kaya itong place utility na to? Now, ano ba kasi ang purpose ng ating marketing? Okay? Ang marketing natin nakakapag-provide daw po yan ng 4 na klase ng utility or 4 na klase ng benefits. So, isa sa mga klase ng utility na yon is what we call as place utility. Pero kasama ng place utility is naandyan yung form utility, okay? Naandyan yung time utility, and then naandyan yung exchange. Yeah, exchange utility. So we have place, form, time, and exchange utility. So ano yung form utility? Unahin ko lang to. Yung form utility po, yan yung utility na nakukuha natin sa marketing kapag yung form ng produkto ay nagbabago. Okay? Kunwari, yung strawberry, naging strawberry jam, form utility po yan. Ano naman ang time utility? Time utility is when we make the product available to the market when it is needed. Kunwari, hindi ngayon season ng dragon fruit. Pero may mga farmers na nag-imbak ng dragon fruit at may nabibili ka pa rin dragon fruit. That's time utility. Okay? You're making the product available when it is needed. Exchange utility, or we also call this as possession utility, basically means you are possession. Tama ba spelling ko? Anyways, possession utility means you are giving the product doon sa mga tao na kailangan ng produkto na yan. That's possession utility. And place utility naman, that is when we make the products available where it is needed. Okay? Kunwari, ikaw ay isang farmer, nagtatanim ka sa tuktok ng Mount Everest. Wala naman pwedeng pumunta doon sa tuktok ng Mount Everest para bumili sa'yo. So, anong gagawin mo? Ibababa mo siya, pupunta mo siya sa SM. Place utility yan. So, ang place utility is created by which function? Tingin nyo. So, by which function? It is created by, yan, tama, transportation. When we transport the product from the far-flung rural areas going to the market, we are creating place utility. Okay? Next, which pair of economic system is most accurately matched with its core organizing principle? Okay? So we are looking at the economic system and yung principle. Dapat daw tama yung matching. Okay? So is it A, B, C, or D? Unahin natin si A. Capitalism. Now, when you say capitalism, yan ay tinatawag din po natin yan na free market. Free market society or free market economics. So under capitalism, walang anyone na nagdidictate kung ano yung gagawin or kung ano yung ipoproduce or kung paano pepresyuhan. Wala kang central planning authority, walang nagsiset ng presyo. Okay? Meron kang kakayahan to get resources privately. Eh, may kakayahan kang magnegosyo freely. Yun ang core principle ng capitalism. So sa letter A, sabi niya dyan, capitalism, central planning sets all prices and outputs is actually kabaliktaran ng sinabi ko. Okay? Kasi under capitalism, wala po tayong central planning authority dyan that sets the prices and that sets the output level. So this is wrong. How about letter B, mercantilism? Household decides output based on free entry. So ano ba kasi ang mercantilism? So mercantilism is a economic system that emphasizes state-led trade surplus. So more trading, sa trading po naka-focus yan. Okay? So it's not on the household deciding the output based on free entry, but it is more on trading. Mercantilism. Socialism naman, this is more of public ownership of resources. Kumbaga, lahat daw ng resources ng isang bansa pagmamay-ari ng lahat. So yan po ang socialism. Okay? Now, opposite, actually, yung definition dito. Kasi sabi niya dyan, socialism, private ownership. Wait. Private ownership is always unrestricted. Okay, so medyo nilito tayo doon, no? So, private ownership is not restricted. So, ibig sabihin, pinapayagan ang private ownership. So, mali. Kasi under socialism, wala actually private ownership. Lahat po ay puro public. Okay? Lahat ay pagmamay-ari. Lahat ng resources ay pagmamay-ari ng lahat. So, kapag mali si A, B, at saka C, ang tamang sagot na dyan is letter D. Capitalism, okay, may private property, tama, nabanggit ko sa inyo yan kanina. And the private property guides allocation through markets. Kaya nga ang capitalism, tinatawag din siya na free market economics. No? Kasi we are allowing the people to do their own thing. We are allowing the sellers and the buyers to control what is happening in the economic atmosphere. Okay, so that's the correct answer here is letter D, capitalism. Private property guides allocation through markets. Next, which change is most consistent with the short run in agricultural production? Okay. So, short run in agricultural production. Ang production kasi natin, guys, nahahati yan into two types of production run. Okay? So, meron tayong short run and then meron tayong tinatawag na long run. So, anong pinagkaiba ng short run? Anong pinagkaiba niya sa long run? Simply speaking, kapag sinabi nating short run, we are only well, mahalaga ang timeline dito, pero mas mahalagang indicator ng short run versus long run, yung types of inputs at that particular period. So, for example, in the long run, dahil masyadong mahaba yung panahon dyan, in the long run, wala po tayong fixed input. So, in the long run, lahat po ay puro variable. Dahil masyadong mahaba yung panahon dyan, lahat ng mga inputs nagbabago. Yun ang sinasabi dyan. Okay? Now, in the short run naman, dahil maikli lang yung panahon, nagkakaroon ka ng dalawang klase ng inputs. Some of your inputs are fixed, whereas some are variable. So, yan lang yung difference ng dalawa. So, short run, fixed at variable inputs. Long run, lahat po ay puro variable. So, alin dyan yung nagpapakita ng short run? So, short run, kung saan meron kang fixed and variable input, it is letter... Tama, no? Letter A. At least one key input is fixed, while the others can be adjusted or variable. Si letter B, all inputs can be varied without limitation within the season, more likely long run yan. Lahat ay variable. Letter C, farmers can instantly expand land area without constraints. This is a false statement, ano? Well, farmers can expand land area without constraints in the long run. Pero with using the word instantly, hindi yan totoo, ano? Hindi naman si farmer basta-basta makakapag-expand na lang ng lupa yan. They can in the long run. Letter D, technology improves automatically as output increases. Wala po yung kinalaman sa short run or long run ng negosyo. Okay? So, again guys, patalastas lang ulit, what are the 3 most important review tips that I can give you as board examinees? So for me, isa sa mga, ito yung tatlong strategy that helped me a lot when I passed the board exam and topped the board exam way back 2021. So nung time na yun, ako po ay nag-work. So it is very important for me to stay structured and organized. Dapat talaga meron kang merong skeleton, merong maayos na topics kang nire-review every day. And each topic should build upon the future topic that you will be reviewing. So, mahalaga na meron kang reviewer na naka-organize from the most fundamental topics going to the most advanced. So, stay structured. Next, hindi po, besides reading and watching lectures, isa sa mga pinakamakakatulong talaga sa inyo is active recall. Okay? Ano ang active recall? Simply speaking, ang active recall, yan yung kabaliktaran ng pag-absorb lamang ng information. When you are absorbing information only, akala natin na may natutunan tayo. Meron naman, no? Pero mas effective na masasabi natin na mas marami tayong natututunan if we do active recall. Sa active recall kasi, instead of absorbing information, what we do is to actively get the information out of our brain. Okay? So, paano yun? Kapag ikaw ay nagsasagot ng mga multiple choice questions, you are practicing active recall. Kapag ikaw ay nagsasagot ng mga flashcards, you are practicing active recall. Kapag sinusubukan mong i-explain yung mga concepts sa mga agricultural concepts sa friend mo na nagpe-prepare din for board exam, you are also practicing active recall. And one best way to practice one best way, no, na i-prepare mo sa active recall, lalo na kapag multiple choice questions yung sinasagot mo, is to always rationalize or to always understand why the correct answer is the correct answer and why the others are wrong. Kaya nga ako, isa sa mga lectures, isa talaga sa mga style ng lectures ko is this Q&A topic, Q&A style of lecturing. Kasi by this Q&A and by explaining to you the concepts behind it, alam kong mas tumatatak sa inyo yung mga topics na nadidiscuss ko. Okay? So, based off on these three most important review tips for board exam, okay, gumawa rin po ako ng course and we call that course as Learning Agri with Al. Okay? So, sa Learning Agri with Al, naandyan na, very organized, organisado na po. Okay? Yung mga different topics for each subject. So, for each topic, makakakita ka dyan ng video lectures. And kung ayaw mong panoorin yung video lectures, okay lang, meron akong handouts. Diba? Na yung handouts na yun is basically based on those video lectures. So it's very, very organized. So check na si number 1. Aside from that, meron tayong mga quizzes. Okay? Meron tayong mga quizzes and meron tayong Anki flashcards that could help you in actively recalling topics. Ang kagandahan po dun sa ating mga quizzes, guys, meron pa siyang feedback. Kung saan, i-explain kung bakit yun yung tamang sagot and bakit yung iba mali yung sagot. Okay? Now, for this season, I am also offering like a online lecture and online guide sa inyong lahat. Okay? Starting July. So if you are interested or anyone you knows someone that is interested, ito yung inclusions ng ating course and alam ko, sigurado ako in the bottom of my heart na makakatulong ito sa inyo as you prepare for your licensure exam for agriculturists. Now, I did have a lot of good reviews left by the last season. In fact, mayroon akong naging top-notcher rin sa ating Learning Agri with Al na booster course. So, good yan. So, tanungin nyo sila kapag kayo ay may doubt kung mag-e-enroll ba kayo sa akin or hindi. And in terms of prices, ito po yung pricing tier natin as of now. So since tapos na ang February, nasa March na tayo, yan na po yung presyo ng ating course. Okay? So kaunting advertisement lamang, kaunting patalastas before we go on to our next 10 questions. Okay, next. Which approach measures GDP by summing spending on final goods and services? Okay? So here we are looking at an approach in measuring gross domestic product. And itong approach daw na to, what does it do? It sums up all spending on final goods and services. Diba? Minsan nasa question na mismo yung tamang sagot. So since ang approach ng GDP measurement na to is to sum up all spending, all expenditures, ang tamang sagot po dyan ay expenditure approach. Okay? Now, meron po tayong tatlong approach to measure GDP. Isa yan, expenditure approach. It's number 1. So sa expenditure approach, ina-add natin lahat ng expenses sa loob ng bansa. So ano-anong expenses yan? Consumption, ina-add natin ang consumption, investment, okay, gastos ng mga negosyo, ina-add natin yung gastos ng gobyerno, government expenses, tapos ina-add natin yung tinatawag nating net export. Okay? So ano ang net export? Net export po is export minus import. Okay? So that's expenditure approach. Ano naman yung second na approach? Yung second na approach is income approach. So sa expenditure approach, ina-add natin lahat ng expenses. Ang income approach naman, ina-add natin lahat ng income sa loob ng bansa. Okay? And finally, we have what we call as value-added or production approach. So value-added approach or production approach, parehas lang po yan. We also call this, guys, as output approach. So ang value-added approach naman or production approach or output approach, ina-add natin dyan lahat ng napoproduce sa loob ng ating bansa. So yan yung 3 different approaches in measuring gross domestic product. Okay? Next question. Which pairing correctly matches the policy tool with its primary authority in most economies? Okay? So again, tinitignan natin dyan yung may best na pairing between monetary and fiscal policy. So we are looking here at ano yung policy, okay? And sino yung organization, okay? Sino yung organization or institution na involved dun sa policy na yun. Okay? So meron na naman tayong dalawang policy dyan. Okay? Meron tayong fiscal at meron tayong monetary policy. Anong pinagkaiba ng dalawang yan? Ang fiscal policy po, ang mismong gumagawa ng fiscal policy is the government itself. Okay? So when I say the government itself, kasama na dyan yung legislative natin, tsaka yung executive natin. Yung paggawa ng budget, yung GAA na naging issue, ano? Yung taxes. Yan. So, fiscal policy po, government po ang gumagawa niyan. Another type of policy to control, to help alleviate inflation sa bansa natin is what we call as monetary policy naman. So, ang monetary policy naman, ang gumagawa niyan ay hindi si government but rather si central bank. At ang ginagalaw ni central bank is yung money supply ng bansa. Or yung interest rate, kasama na rin yan. So dito, tingnan natin, si letter A, sabi niya dyan, monetary policy, legislature, changing tax rate and public spending. Mali na. Okay? Kasi ang legislature, changing tax rate and public spending is not monetary policy but rather fiscal policy. Letter B, fiscal policy, banks deciding inflation targets by vote. Mali. Wala naman ako tinuro na ang mga bangko ay nagde-decide kung ano yung inflation by voting it. How about letter D? Fiscal policy is central bank setting reserve requirements for banks. Mali yan. In fact, central bank, again, hindi yan fiscal policy but rather monetary policy. So the correct answer here is letter C. Monetary policy, central bank actions affecting money supply. Okay? So letter C ang tamang sagot dyan. Next, the basis of specialization in free trade is best explained by what? Is it best explained by comparative advantage due to differing opportunity costs? Is it based on equal opportunity costs across countries for all products? Is it because of random specialization determined solely by population size? Or is it total self-sufficiency to avoid importing any commodity? So ano ba kasi yung specialization na tinatawag dyan when it comes to free trade? Ang sinasabi lang sa konsepto ng specialization, may mga produkto ang isang bansa na kaya niyang i-produce. Backtrack tayo. Bawat bansa, may mga kanya-kanyang talento yan. Yun ang sinasabi sa specialization. Okay? Now, anong talento? Anong area ng talent yung tinitignan natin? Since economics yan, tinitignan natin yung area ng talent of production. So, bawat bansa daw, may mga produkto yan na kayang i-produce ng mas mura, ng mas efficient as compared to other countries. So, for example, langis. Saan marami ang langis? Sa Middle East. Right? So, yun yung kanilang talent. Kaya nga kapag natamaan ang Middle East, katulad ng nangyayari ngayon, umaakyat talaga ang presyo ng langis. Ano naman ang talent ng Pilipinas? Ang talent ng Pilipinas is more on agricultural commodities, katulad ng pinya, katulad ng kape. Kaya ang Middle East, sila ay nag-i-import ng langis sa ibang mga bansa kasi yun yung talent nila. Si Pilipinas naman, si Middle East ay nag-e-export ng langis. I mean, si Pilipinas naman ay nag-e-export ng mga agricultural products papunta rin sa ibang bansa kasi yun yung strength natin. Ang tawag po doon, comparative advantage. Okay? So, ang tanong siguro natin, sir, bakit kasi hindi na lang tayo magsarili, no, na mag-produce ng langis dito sa ating bansa? Well, hindi po pwede yan kasi wala naman tayong ganong kalaking oil reservoir as compared to the Middle East. Okay? Natural kasi sa Middle East na ganun yung kanilang lugar na maraming fossil fuel. Now, at the same time, hindi mo rin pwedeng sabihin kay Middle East na, oy, mag-produce ka kasi ng sarili mong agricultural food kasi nga puro disyerto sa lugar nila. So aangkatin talaga nila yung agricultural food. Kasi nga, bihira lamang yung mga lumalaking pananim sa kanilang lugar. So yan yung sinasabi ng specialization. So letter C ang tamang sagot dyan. Next question. Which option is a non-tariff barrier that can restrict agricultural imports? So, a non-tariff barrier. So, ano bang ibig sabihin ng tariff muna? Ang tariff ay tax na ipinapataw sa mga imports. Okay? So, ang tariff ay mga taxes na ipinapataw kapag may mga produktong pumapasok sa bansa. That's tariff. Okay? Now, this, ano naman ang non-tariff? Ang tariff na yan is a barrier. Okay? So, bakit siya tinawag na barrier? Kasi barrier siya for international trade. Kasi every time na magpapataw ka ng tax, naapektuhan yung trading internationally or globally. In fact, kapag ikaw ay isang exporter at nalalagyan ng taripa or tax yung produkto mo, parang nadi-discourage ka na magpadala na lang ng product dun sa bansa na yun. Okay? Kaya siya tinawag na barrier. Ngayon, ano ang non-tariff barrier? Yan ay mga non-tax barriers. Okay? So, mga non-tax na negatively nakaka-apekto rin sa importation ng produkto. Okay? So, hanapin muna natin yung mali dito. Letter D is mali na. A per unit import tax collected at the border. Bakit mali? Kasi nga, tariff yan. Ang hinahanap po natin ay, non-tariff. Okay? Non-tariff yung hinahanap natin. Hindi tariff, but non-tariff. Okay? How about this? Letter C, a uniform reduction in shipping costs for importers. Kapag bumaba ang shipping costs ng mga importers, ano sa tingin nyo ang mangyayari? Ma-encourage or madi-discourage sila na mag-import? Or mag-export, I mean. May-encourage actually sila. Okay? Dahil mas mababa yung cost, gugustuhin nila ngayon mag-import. So, hindi siya ngayon barrier. It actually helps importation. How about this? A currency appreciation that lowers import prices. Again, kapag bumaba ang presyo ng import, ma-encourage kang mag-import. So, hindi siya barrier. So, alin ang barrier dyan? Ito ho, letter A. Quota. So, ano ang quota? Okay, with the word itself, quota, limitation po yan. Kunwari, kapag sinabi ng Pilipinas na ang quota natin sa pag-aangkat ng rice ay 100,000 tons only, kapag na-hit na natin yung 100,000 tons, hindi na tayo kukuha ng rice sa ibang bansa. Kaya siya nagiging barrier, kaya siya nagiging limitation. So, letter A ang tamang sagot dyan. Next. Which marketing function most directly supports better price decisions by providing timely data on buyers, competitors, and demand conditions? So again, kapag kayo nagsasagot ng mga tanong, mainam rin na ina-underline nyo, binibilugan nyo yung mga keywords na nakikita nyo dun sa question. So dito, ano yung keyword dyan? Data. Diba? So tignan natin, alin ba yung meron dyang related sa data? Packaging, malayo yan sa data. Storage, malayo rin sa data. Grading, malayo sa data. Okay? So yung marketing function na nagpo-provide ng data sa mga buyers, competitors, and other stakeholders is market intelligence. Okay? So letter B po, ang tamang sagot dyan, market intelligence. Okay? Next, if household income rises and consumers buy more fresh vegetables, and the fresh vegetable is a normal good, according to this statement, what happens in the vegetable market? Okay? Ceteris paribus. So, ano ba kasi ang normal good? So, base doon sa statement, yung vegetable daw, yung fresh vegetable daw natin is a normal good. So, what does a normal good mean? Ang normal good, kinukumpara natin kung ano yung mangyayari sa demand based off on what happens in the income of consumers. So, ibig sabihin, tinitingnan natin yung relationship ng income ni consumer sa demand. And kapag ang good natin ay normal, ang income at demand, parehas sila ng direction or meron silang tinatawag na direct or positive relationship. Ibig sabihin, kapag po tumaas ang income, ang demand ay tataas rin. Kapag naman bumaba ang income ni consumer, ang demand ay bababa rin. So, yun yung sinasabi nating normal good. So, ano ang opposite ng normal good? Ang opposite ng normal good ay inferior goods. Okay? Now, ang inferior goods, yan yung mga budgetarian na mga produkto, budget product, sabihin na natin. And inverse ang relationship ng income at demand. Ibig sabihin, kapag ang income ay tumaas, walang bibili ng inferior good kasi bibili sila ng normal good. Kaya ang demand for inferior goods, bababa. On the other hand, kapag biglang bumaba naman ang income ni consumer, ang demand ay tataas. Magtitipid sila, kaya bibili sila ng inferior goods. So here, we are talking about demand. We're not talking about supply. So we can actually cancel out yung mga nagbabanggit dyan ng supply. So mali na yan. Mali na rin si letter D. So, it's either letter A or letter C. So sabi sa letter A, demand shifts left because income increases savings. Tama kaya yun? Now, ano yung pagkakaiba ng shifting sa left at saka shifting sa right? Tingnan natin dito. Kapag sinabi natin na ang demand ay nag-shift sa left, basically nag-decrease yan. So left is always decrease, right is always increase. Okay? So dito si letter A, ang sinasabi niya, yung demand daw ay nag-shift sa left, nag-decrease daw yung demand. Tama ba? Mali, ano? Kasi sabi dito sa statement, the household income rises and consumers buy more. Consumers buy more. So the demand actually increases, it did not decrease. Kaya hindi dapat nag-shift sa left yan. Dapat nag-shift siya sa right. Okay, correct. So ang demand po ay mag-shift dapat yan sa right because income increases purchases. So ang tamang sagot dyan, letter C. Oh, how about this? Which example best illustrates a change in quantity demand rather than a change in demand? So babalikan natin yung lesson natin kanina. Doon sa change in quantity supply, pero i-relate lang natin siya sa change in quantity demand versus change in supply. So ano ba yung pagkakaiba niyan? Yun yung tinatanong dun sa question. So ang difference na, ang pagkakaiba ng dalawang yan is ano ba yung main determinant or ano ba yung factor that affects change in quantity demand or change in quantity demand and change in demand. So kapag may change in quantity demand, remember guys, ang tanging factor lang, only factor that affects a change in quantity demand is the price of the good itself. Nothing more, nothing less. Okay? Yung presyo lang po ang nakakapagpabago ng quantity demand. Ano naman ang nakakapagpabago ng demand? Ang nakakapagpabago ng demand ay yung mga non-price determinant. So sa demand, yung non-price determinants po natin would be TONI. So ano yung TONI? Taste. T stands for taste. O stands for other products or price of other products. N stands for number of buyers. I stands for income. And E stands for expectation. So dito, the question is asking a change in quantity demanded. So again, ano lang ulit ang nakapagpabago ng change in quantity demand? Only the price. So puntahan natin isa-isa. Letter D, population. Hindi po yan price. Change in demand yan. Mali na yan. Letter C, income. Oops, change in demand yan. Mali na po yan. Letter B, taste. Taste is yan, T. Okay? Mali na rin po yan. So, the only example here that best illustrates a change in quantity demand is letter A. Okay? When the price of rice increases and household reduces rice purchases. Kasi price lang yan. Price only is the one that causes a change in quantity demand. So letter A ang tamang sagot dyan. Number 24. Which factor most strongly tends to make demand for a commodity more elastic? So, alin daw sa apat na options na yan will make the commodity more elastic in terms of demand? So, paano ba natin na masasabi na ang isang commodity ay elastic? So, what does it mean na elastic ang demand ng isang commodity? It means ang mga buyers sensitive sa pagbabago ng presyo. So, kapag tumaas ang presyo, for example, ang mga buyers hindi nabibili. Yun ang ibig sabihin ng isang commodity na may elastic na demand. Magbaback out agad si buyer kapag ang presyo ay tumaas. Okay? Now, ano ang karakteristik ng isang commodity na may elastic na demand? Okay? Now, ang sagot po dito ay letter D. So, bakit letter D? The commodity has many close substitutes available. So, bakit elastic, sir, ang isang commodity kapag marami siyang substitute sa market? So, simply speaking, kasi kapag marami siyang substitute sa market, madaling mag-shift ng bibilhin na commodity. Okay? So, for example, merienda. Kapag nagmahal yung siopaw, pwede kang bumili ng monay. Pwede kang bumili ng turon. Diba? So, marami siyang close substitute in terms of merienda na substitute. So, when the price of that commodity increases, pwede kang mag-shift, pwede kang mamili ng ibang produkto. That makes that commodity more elastic. How about letter C? The commodity is a basic necessity for household. Kapag ang commodity mo ay basic necessity, hindi po yan elastic, but rather inelastic yan. Hindi yan basta-basta nagbabago. Okay? Kasi bibili pa rin at bibili si buyer. Katulad na lamang ng rice. Okay? Ang rice is staple food ng Pilipino yan. Kaya kapag tumaas ang presyo ng rice, meron at meron pa rin bibili ng rice. How about letter B? The commodity takes a large share of farm output. Wala po yung kinalaman sa elasticity. Okay? Ganun din si letter A. The commodity is purchased infrequently each year. Wala rin po yung kinalaman sa elasticity. Letter A might affect the elasticity pero hindi yan yung direct characteristic ng isang commodity na may elastic na demand. Okay, so we have last two questions. In a simple Keynesian framework, the consumption function primarily relates consumption to... Okay. So, ano kaya ang consumption function, basically? Yun yung tinatanong. What is the consumption function? So, guys, tandaan nyo to. The consumption function is basically a mathematical formula that explains the relationship between two things. Anong relationship yan? Ano ang relationship ng disposable income sa consumption? Okay? So, ano ang relationship ng disposable income sa consumption? So, hanapin natin, based off on my definition, yung tamang sagot sa choices. So, is it letter A? Oops, interest rate na yan. And marginal propensity to invest. Letter B, exchange rate and marginal propensity to import. C, money supply and the reserve requirement ratio. That's already wrong. So, letter D, yung pinakatamang sagot. The relationship of disposable income and marginal propensity to consume. Kasi ang consumption function, ang formula niyan is C is equal to A, if I'm not mistaken, it's A plus B, Y. Okay? Yan ang formula ng consumption function natin. So, C stands for consumption. A stands for autonomous consumption. Ano yung consumption kapag ang disposable income ay zero? Kasi hindi naman porket zero ang income mo, hindi ka na magko-consume, di ba? Hindi naman pwede yun. Ano yung B? B stands for marginal propensity to consume. Ano ang marginal propensity to consume? What is consumption for each additional peso added in your income? So, ibig sabihin, kapag nadadagdagan daw ng piso yung income mo, paano mo hinahati yung piso na yan? Like, kunwari, 60% napupunta sa consumption. So, ang MPC mo na ngayon dyan ay 0.6. So, baka nagtataka kayo, sir, pag 60% napupunta sa consumption, nasan po yung 40%? Now, in theory, yung 40% na yan, pupunta dapat yan sa, saan? Pupunta dapat yan sa savings. Okay? So, yung 40% ay pupunta dapat sa savings. So, yun yung B natin. And yung Y natin is income. So, yan yung formula ng ating consumption function. Kaya tama si letter D, ano? Disposable income and the marginal propensity to consume describes our consumption function. So, letter D. Last question. The demand for money is commonly explained as holding money for transactions, precautions, and okay? So again, theory ulit ito ni Keynes. So merong theory si Keynes on the demand for holding money. So meron daw tayong 3 reasons kung bakit tayo naghahawak ng pera. So yung first reason, nakalagay dyan, it is for transaction. So that we call that as your transactional demand for money. That's the first na reason. Kailangan kasi natin ng pera para may magamit tayo na makipagpalitan in our day-to-day expenses. So that's transactional demand for money. Another one is what we call as precautionary demand for money. So precautionary demand for money naman, kailangan nating humawak ng pera kasi may mga unforeseen circumstances. Pwede kang magkasakit, pwede kang maaksidente. Yan. Precautionary demand for money. Yan. And we have number 3. Ano kaya yung number 3? So meron kang transaction, precaution, is it depreciation, rationing, arbitrage, or speculative motives? So ang tamang sagot po dyan is letter D. Okay? So yung third na demand for money is because of speculative means. So what does it mean? Speculative demand for money. Nakadepende na yan, no? Related na po yan doon sa konsepto natin ng interest rate. Or ano yung interest rate ng bonds sa market. So basically, kapag daw mababa ang interest rate, ang mga tao, naghahawak sila ng pera. Ayaw nilang ipasok yan sa bangko, ayaw nilang bumili ng bonds kasi nga masyadong mababa yung interest rate. Pero kapag daw ina-anticipate nila, they are speculating na tataas yung interest rate, ipinapasok nila, bumababa yung demand nila for money kasi ipinapasok nila yan sa bangko or pinambibili nila yan ng bonds. Okay. So that's it for the day, guys. This is a very enriching lecture sa agricultural economics and marketing. I hope na marami kayong natutunan. please tune in for more free lectures that I have na ipopost ko rin sa ating Facebook page. Again, maraming salamat sa pagdalo sa ating free lecture and I hope you guys have a great night.